Under that, so that we begin to teach dogma rather than open-ended knowledge, we will have ended our role as a university. No? So the spirit of university, believe it or not, is the critical quest for knowledge. It is free inquiry. It has nothing to do with dogma. It hates dogma. It hates orthodoxy. That is the reason also why the university attracts all kinds of crazy people. No? Because it is hospitable, it is friendly to out-of-the-box thinking. Because that's the only way you can advance knowledge, is to interrupt its continuity. No? And that, to me, to a certain extent, I mean, looking back at the 100 years of UP has performed that role very well, I must say. We were the home of the craziest, most exotic, most out-of-the-way thinkers. No? UP was the repository of the most complex Filipinos, no? For every generation. They're very, very complex, no? And we never sought to reduce that complexity into something that we can predict. And that includes people like Marcos, Jose Maria Sison, Norm Miswari, Benny Chamson, who is the head of the Communist Party of the Philippines, no? Gringo Honasan, and Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, etc. It's a very complex community. And that's why UP is UP. It doesn't teach any dogma. It doesn't create just one type of graduate. No? It's all kinds of graduates. Now, when they are corrupt and they steal from the nation, please don't blame UP. No? Very likely they were already corrupt and dishonest when they came to the university. Just kidding. No. But there's very little you can do about ethics.
Okay, we'll come back now to UP Baguio for the last question. Do I see a hand?
Please.
Yes, ma'am.
I see you, President.
Professor David, thank you very much for the very stimulating talk and your answer to the questions. Just one last question, to me a very difficult one because it's been asked of me also. What about basic education? What has UP got to do with it? Of course, some of us will say it is beyond our reach. But precisely, we are a university of the people, and basic education is a very pressing problem for the country right now. What do you think can be done within the limitations of our resources?
That's a hard question, Presi. I remember in the 1980s, I was director of the Third World Studies Center. What we tried to do was to organize teaching brigades, volunteers from Diliman at that time. We created a curriculum just revolving around the latest advances in the humanities, in the natural sciences, in the social sciences, and we went around, like red guards, visiting universities, private universities basically, who would play host to us, and then they would gather all the public school teachers in the region. And then there is a whole day seminar. I thought that, Presi, you were going into another question, which was really bugging me when I was preparing this lecture. The question is this. When you get high school graduates into UP, you admit them under UPCAT. I remember, I think during the time of Pepe Abueva, we initiated the experimental democratic admissions. Is that OD Corpus? Yeah, OD Corpus. It was a very nice program, which meant that people who did not quite make the mark, the cutoff point, we took them. And what did we do? We separated them from the, and gave them psychosocial assistance and refresher review courses instead of just English 1, intensive English 1. Yung bang ganon, no? At that time, I felt a little wary about that because to a certain extent, if you're a member of that cohort of democratic admissions, there is a certain implied stigma. That means you are less than the real. It's a disadvantage. No? Although I understand that a subsequent study was undertaken, and they did very well in their professions. The first XDS graduates. No? But I have never really believed in separating people and then giving them additional support, no? But admitting them. Why? Because it is not the function of the university. If there is inadequacy in basic education, you cannot, as a university, hope to repair that through your students that you've already admitted. No? Mahihirapan ka. You will be consuming a lot of resources in order to fill up the inadequacies created by the basic educational system. By the way, this is a problem that was faced by the first president of UP, Murray Bartlett. Precisely, there were 785 students that enrolled in the School of Fine Arts on its opening year, no? And many of them were not qualified for a university education. So what did they do? They had to, the following year, tighten the admission rules so that the admission went down drastically to only about more than 300 students. Why? That is the autopoiesis of a university. It will always stress the primacy of academic excellence, believe me. No. Because unless it does that, no, if it allows itself to be, let us say, colonized by a socialist idea and then taken, then it would be a social work institution, not a university. But at the same time, I also believe that a university that tries to act as a university is a university that must be a university within a society, which means that it's got to establish its clear function in that society. What that function is, it has to define for itself, not once, but every day, actually, every year, all the time, in a continuous way. That is the challenge that we face as a university. Unless we can continuously invent and reinvent ourselves, other institutions will take over our function. And we will see ourselves marginalized, consigned to the margins of the educational system. We would not like that. No.
Thank you very much, Professor David. May I now request President Dr. Emerlinda Roman to give the certificate of recognition to Professor Randolph S. David.
Before I do that, I'd like to make a confession. I violated the rule. Partially, because I turned off my cell phone when Randy was giving his talk. I turned it on after his talk, and I got a text message from Dodong Nemenzo, and he said, I watched Randy's lecture in my computer through the internet.
Wonderful.
And then I texted him back and I said, was it clear? And he said, very clear, including the open forum, except that I could not understand the questions. Hindi daw clear yung questions from UP Diliman. Eh, nandun siya sa Diliman. Anyway, Chancellor Presi described Randy as an intellectual. I think it is a description that many of our colleagues agree with, and it is a recognition that I think Randy very much deserves. But there is one attribute of Randy that he is also admired for, and that is his ability to infect others, to think seriously and to think deeply. And I think that is what he has done to us this afternoon. And I think you will agree with me when I said that. It got us to thinking about UP and what exactly is its role. Let me share with you what we plan to do next. After all the lectures have been delivered this year, this is the 20th and there are 10 more to go. After all the lectures are delivered, we plan to hold a big conference in 2009 where we will put together the lectures for the first two categories, which tackled the University of the Philippines. And we will have that conference to talk about what UP needs to do and how we can develop the character that Randy was referring to earlier, develop character in our students, and how to nurture in our students as well as in our colleagues a sense of country or a sense of service to the nation. And at this point, I think I can very well say that Randy's lecture is going to be a basic reference during that conference. Randy, I think we do not really have a captive audience today because they were really free to leave the hall. There's no security guard there. What we have is a captivated audience. So thank you, Randy. So I'd like to present this certificate of award to Randy, one of 12 Centennial Fellows, selected not only on the basis of their scholarship, but also on the basis of their deep commitment to the University of the Philippines. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed it as well as we did.
Thank you, President Roman and Professor David. On behalf of the Centennial Lecture Series Committee, we thank our lecturer for the insightful view and engaging discussion that he shared with us this afternoon. We would also like to thank the audience here, as well as those in the regional campuses. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you again in our next Centennial Lecture that will be held on Wednesday, September 3 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the STTC Auditorium, National Institute for Science and Mathematics Education,